für politische Bildung made 2 web tools available in English, French, and German. One of those tools is filterbubble.lu. How deep are you stuck in your filter bubble? I guess there's no need to explain to you what a filter bubble is, but there are many people who are not aware of those bubbles and who are not aware of the consequences of those bubbles. And this is why we put up a test with some questions you just have to answer by a simple yes or no. And at the end of the test, you will get an impression on how deep you are stuck in your bubble, and you will get some tips on how to burst this bubble. Additionally, we have some educational material available for teachers and educators to work on this with young people. A second tool is called propaganda.guide. And again, if you rely on information coming mostly from social media, you will be confronted with a lot of half-truths, lies, misleading messages, which are quite often difficult to distinguish from reliable information. The website propaganda.guide helps to expose false information from reliable information. And by doing this, if you are in front of a post, a tweet, a video, a poster, you can ask yourself 10 simple questions you will find on our web tool. You can answer them by swiping yes or no, a little yes, a little or a lot of no. And this will get you an impression on whether you're confronted with neutral information or if there is someone wanting you to act or to think in a specific way. Again, here you will find additional information and educational tools for educators and teachers on our website. So go and have a look, propaganda.guide, filterbubble.lu, and give it a try. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roman. And I'm very glad that you presented this project. This is something very different from the other projects that we've seen so far, and it shows once again the diversity of action that is being taken. We're going to move on to our second pitch, and another familiar face. Hello, Chris. I'd just like to say a word of introduction to you. Chris Grimmenprez. She is a researcher at the University of Leuven in Belgium. Her PhD and book on the European Union and Education for Democratic Citizenship forms the foundation for the Case for EU, which is an innovation project for EU learning. So it's lovely to have you here also, Chris.
Thank you.
Would you like to share your screen, Chris, so that you're ready for your pitch?
Yes.
Okay, that's looking very good. Wonderful. And then 3, 2, 1, the floor is yours, Chris.
Thank you very much. Case for EU is a Jean Monnet project at Leuven University in Belgium. It's a focus on case teaching about EU rights and values in secondary schools. We want to empower for active citizenship by teacher training and developing didactic materials. We work in a cooperation of the faculties of law, social science and political science, philosophy, and teacher training. To have a stable construction, we base EU learning on 2 pillars. On the one hand, there is objectivity, which we guarantee by working with the EU treaties signed by all member states and the Charter of Fundamental Rights. On the other hand, to invite for critical thinking and pluralism, we propose to work with cases. No smell of EU propaganda. Cases are real happened stories about people like you and me who all at once discovered that rules by the EU impacted on their daily lives and they went to court. Our stories are based on cases decided by the Court of Justice of the European Union. We explain the citizens' rights, and then we delve deeper to find the DNA of the EU that is involved in the case, EU values, objectives, and principles. In this way, we come to knowledge, and we invite critical thinking, because in a case, very often a balancing is to be made. So wake up, EU citizens. Time has come to teach about EU rights and obligations, to discuss them, to change them by participating in democratic life of the EU. Case teaching is a valuable tool to empower for active EU citizenship. Case for EU, is it a case for you? Our project develops a bundle of some 40 case cards in many fields. They make EU learning attractive, fun, and profound. Contact us if you are interested. Choose a case in your field of interest and test it out. You are very welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. That was, once again, top standard, as I've come to expect of you in our interactions over the last months. So we're going to close the last project for this second round of Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action with a pitch from, and I do apologize in advance because I'm probably mispronouncing your name, and please feel free to correct me. And it's Asali Siarai. And
yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and the topic is going to be fostering democratic citizenship via e-learning. And would you like to share your screen, Salai?
Yes. Just 1 second.
Okay. Yes, that's looking very good. So I will hand over to you. 3, 2, 1, over to you.
Yeah. Hello to everyone. My name is Sergey Saley. I'm from Belarus, and I would like to present a project that was developed by my organization, which is a WIT Association, within the work of the East European Network for Citizenship Education, NECE. The project itself was developed in order to overcome difficulties related to COVID-19 pandemic, in particular the problems that arise in professional context and communication between civic educators in our region, meaning 6 countries of Eastern Partnership and Russia. So the goal of the project was the contribution to fostering of democratic citizenship in our region that was mentioned in the countries through quality human rights and history online education tailored to the local needs. And our project had 4 objectives. The first objective was to train members of the project team in creation of online courses. In order to do that, there was a special course, how to develop online courses, and representatives of 5 countries from our region took part in that course. As a result of the course, we developed 4 online courses that address contemporary challenges in teaching history and human rights. And also there was an aim to present results of the project to the public, and it was already presented in the NECE campus during the Civic Education Week that was run within the NECE network. And also today is one of the opportunities to present results of the project to the wider public. And also a web of NECE training activities online. The topics of online courses you see on the screen, they are introduction to human rights-based approach in education, civic journalism and video blogging, and memory of the World War II in the Eastern Partnership countries and Russia, politics and practice. These courses were developed by members of 2 working groups that work within the NECE. One of the working group is promoting human rights education, and the second is human rights in history. Civic education and history. All the courses are placed on the Moodle platform. You could see how it looks like. All the courses are in Russian at the moment, but we plan to translate them into English in the future. And each course consists of 4 parts: introductory module, 4 thematic modules, final module, and course evaluation. And everything is provided on Moodle platform, as you saw, and also there are Zoom webinars within each of the modules. Target group for our project are formal and non-formal educators from NECE region. And the expected results are professional development of educators of our target group and also the active civic participation. Speaking about the lessons learned within the project, I would like to mention a number of them. First of all, related to the content of the course. It proved that these topics, human rights and history, are really relevant for our region. For example, such issues like historical memory, understanding of citizenship and activism are still an issue of debate within the between the countries. So this was really interesting and important to understand, and communication between our participants of our project helped us to overcome difficulties related to different understanding of the content. And also, it was really interesting to mention that cooperation that was developed within the project was also a really good outcome of the project. And speaking about the fourth lesson, which is technology, it was really nice that we have opportunities to use modern technologies to overcome the difficulties of the pandemics and different other crises. But unfortunately, there are some problems, psychological problems related to online teaching. People are really fed up with online. They would want to go more offline. That is why one of the recommendations that we already have is just to try to balance online and offline activities. So this is really important for the success. Yeah, so thank you. I think it was all.
Thank you very much. So we've had three, again, extremely diverse projects. We still have one round of Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action, and that will be taking place after our final round of parallel sessions. That means at 5:30, the Spotlight will be broadcast here from the live stage once again. The next parallel sessions will be beginning at 4 o'clock. But just before we say a day for the moment, or adieu for the moment, I'd like to just ask Dirk, my colleague, so would you like to give us a couple of sound bites of the things that you've been picking up over the day today?
Sure, thanks a lot, Tanya. I've been listening into the panel on is there a role for NGOs in transformation of society, and giving it a critical assessment. And while I was eavesdropping into that discussion, it was really interesting, and I just joined them when they started to debate, actually, is civil society still driving the debate, or have they lost their cloud around it there? And very quickly, the discussion turned around actually the difference between organized and less organized civil society actors, and actually how they can interact with it there. And with most of the recent big societal changes or so, there was an upheaval that was preceding it. And if you look at those upheavals, it was before there was actually a strong civil society active around it there. And one example was being given around the rise of Extinction Rebellion or Fridays for Future that provided that necessary spotlight or disruptive elements, but probably wouldn't have been possible with all the groundworks that have been laid by organized civil society organizations, which provides effect. It sounded a little bit like what we had yesterday already in our discussions around different players or different stakeholders in the civic space can actually fulfill different functions. Yeah, so there was space for people who actually document and create transparency. There is a big and important space for organizations and groupings that provide disruption and put a spotlight on things and put the pressure on it to actually go and get the necessary sense of urgency as well. And there probably also needs to be a space for civil organizations that actually provide solutions and start shaping the way going forward around it there. So it will be really interesting to see how they continue to interact in the future. That was a short soundbite that I had while listening into that panel. And the second one is just looking at the title.
Well, if I could actually hop in there just for a moment, because interestingly, the panel discussion about the background and situation in Belarus and art activism is such a beautiful follow-on from the discussions that were taking place yesterday. And there were just impressive examples shown of how art activism can actually make a difference. The examples were protest songs, paintings, other visual arts being presented as a form of civic resistance. So I think this picks up really on so many of the points that were being made yesterday, that it can be resistance forcing change, and art can move as opposed to just capture things that have happened. Many of the speakers were showing their solidarity with the civilian population in Belarus, and a statement from the talk was that art is a powerful form of citizenship education, and I'm sure you agree with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's really nice to see how all those discussions actually come all together from a very, very high level meta perspective, and then actually hearing it from lots of examples on the ground in specific regions. It's really nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. What was the second soundbite you had, Dirk?
The second panel I've been eavesdropping in was called Unavailable and Inaccessible, Schools Closures and Students' Voice. And that was also very, very interesting. And I think people shared a really great insights in there. The first sentence I've heard eavesdropping into that discussion was around, at the moment, most of the, let's say, less fortunate regions across Europe, people are much more concerned with just providing for the basic needs and just getting food on the table, as was the sentence said. So it's really providing for your family actually dominates and puts every other discussion a little bit at the back burner. And that, of course, also has a big impact on school, especially if students have to stay home, and that adds to the complexity around it there. Teachers, of course, had to really switch very, very quickly to a completely different way of engaging with their students. And that, of course, creates a lot of pressure for them as well. But they actually found out it's not the digitalization or staying or providing the lectures and the curriculum to people which sounded to be the most challenging one. It's actually staying close to the students and actually getting a feel on their mental health as well and on their well-being. And people have been experimenting with lots of different formats of surveys and staying in contact with them. Another big point was around it's quite okay to get organized for a present school. It's also quite good to stay organized for a digital world of it there, but actually getting into that hybrid world of having some people in the school and some people at home and joining remotely, that's when it gets really difficult. Another example was coming actually from Greece. That was around, it's a country which has been in a crisis mode for such a very long time, and teachers are proportionately aged, so they already have difficulties with digitalization around it there, and actually have taken big income cuts. So how can you expect a teacher force that has been suffering for such a long time to actually go and invest on their own time and own budgets into their digital infrastructure to take schooling back from home?
Okay, both of those topics just sound so fascinating, and I'd like to mention one of the projects that came up here, and this was based on the reference framework of competencies for democratic culture, and the title One Framework, Many Contexts. Interestingly, there was a huge amount of overlap here with one of the talks that was taking place this morning already, and that the topics that were coming up, oh, sorry, no. I take that back. That was a mistake. In fact, I have something else I want to say to that. I'm going to revise what I just said, but I'll come to the final project in a moment. But you'll recognize the messages yet again, and it's about access to technology, particularly for young people, is not equal, and how this falls into the broader context of digital competencies for both learners and teachers. And that with the framework of competencies for democratic education, it revolved around different projects, but how it could be used systematically to select games, and there were several examples of this, and how the framework itself was also incorporated as a major reference for game development, how to integrate the competencies in the play process of the game itself. And there was also, particularly when referencing behaviors or values, attitudes, skills, knowledge, or critical understanding, and how it helped provide a shared language and particularly a shared terminology for the conceptualization and competency descriptions. Of course, this all provided an enrichment of the discussion around democracy, but not only for the participants of the game, but already at the partnership level in the development of the games themselves. And that then touches on the final point I'd just like to mention, which has a lot of overlap with an earlier discussion today. And the talk was about youth engagement and civic education, and the European Youth Parliament was involved here. And again, looking at technical knowledge and infrastructure and the whole question of how do you keep your audience engaged? And exactly these points were being touched upon during the European Youth Work and Citizenship Education for Diverse Target Groups this morning in our earlier parallel sessions. The questions were exploring the topics of digital versus hybrid models, which work, what doesn't work so well, how can you achieve outreach to new target groups, which again touches upon one of the topics from this morning, and how, interestingly, through digitalization, previous barriers may in fact have been removed in the meantime. And another topic that was touched upon was the Corona empowerment. And this question for all of us of how do we engage with people during this pandemic? How do we engage with them, particularly in this overabundance of digital content that people are facing at the moment? So I have a very final word before we leave you to get a cup of coffee before the parallel sessions start. And it is, if you would like to see more information about the Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action, all of the pictures that we've seen so far and the 3 remaining ones, please go to Housebase, open up the tab for the conference program and menu, and the final point, Marketplace of Good Practice Projects. That is where you will find the dedicated page of all of the pictures that we've heard so far and the remaining ones. So I wish you a wonderful round in the last session of parallel sessions that will be beginning in 5 minutes. So see you back here at 5:30.
Hello to everybody and a warm welcome to the Digital NECE Conference 2020, and in particular to this workshop called The Role of Civic Educations in Time of Rising Authoritarianism and Illiberalism. My name is Constanze Kürten, and I'm part of the Lab Concepts team, which is the agency supporting the Federal Agency for Civic Education and its European partners of NECE in creation and conduction of this Digital NECE Conference 2020. Hello as well to our Facebook audience. This panel will be live streamed on Facebook. So yeah, if you want to stay undercover, you may switch off your cameras. I would like to give some few technical words before we just dive into the panel. You're very welcome to post your questions in the Zoom chat, but you can do it as well on the digital platform HouseSpace, which we are using for the conference. You should all have received a link to HouseSpace. Please find the link once again in the Zoom chat box and register now if you haven't done so yet. It's quick and easy, and you will find information on both this session as well as the whole conference on the platform. Please remain muted if you're not speaking, but yeah, you feel free to share your camera images so we can see all the lovely faces. What is that music playing? Okay, this was some music.
Muted the NECE 2020. They had the
okay. Okay, now this was all from my side. I wishing everybody a nice event, and I would like to hand over to Tatiana. Thank you.
Yes, hello. A very warm welcome from my side. I'm Tatiana Meijvogel-Vork from ProDemos, Huis voor Democracy and the Rule of Law in the Netherlands, in The Hague. We are here to discuss the role of civic education in times of rising authoritarianism and illiberalism. And when planning on this panel, we even did not anticipate how current this topic would be, looking, for example, at the US elections. In the beginning, we will hear an introduction by Anna Luhrmann, who will present us the newest findings from the VDEM Institute on this issue. Afterwards, Yael Ohana will give us a short reaction on this. And after this part of theory, we will go into praxis, and we will hear from two practitioners about their projects and what difference these projects might mean. I will introduce every speaker before she takes the floor. And after each part, there will be the opportunity for you to put questions via our chat. And at the end, we will hopefully also have some time for a general discussion on this issue. Now I might first give the word to Anna Luhrmann. Anna Luhrmann is an associate professor at the University of Gothenburg and the deputy director of the Priorities of Democracy Institute, VDEM. And the VDEM Institute manages the VDEM project, which produces the world's largest data set on democracy. They publish regularly resource guides on the situation of democracy all over the world. And the resource guide of 2020 wears the title, Defending Democracy Against Illiberal Challenges. Anna Luhrmann, as one of the co-authors of the guide, will present the essence for us in the following presentation. Anna, the floor is yours.
You're muted.
I have been muted. Yes, I've muted myself. So now again, so I'm very happy to be here today. There couldn't be a better timing for this panel than in this week where we're counting the votes of the US elections, where really one candidate shows a very troublesome, lacking commitment to key democratic standards. And this is basically what this guide is about, these kind of illiberal challengers that come from within democracy and what we can do about it. This is building on a long-term project that was supported by the Open Society Foundation and in collaboration with the WZB, the Wissenschaftszentrum in Berlin, where we also held a conference about a year ago about how to make Europe resilient to the authoritarian and illiberal challenges. And we wanted to go from knowledge to action. So this resource guide presents some of the background findings that we have from working on this conference, from discussing at this conference. And I will present it. Can also share the link with you later where you can download it. So I first want to talk about what actually the challenge is. So how do illiberals challenge democracy? Second, I will talk about the strategy. So what are the appropriate guidelines for a democratic response? And then also particularly focusing here, of course, on civic education. And then finally on the tools. What can Democrats do to defend democracy? All right, so laying the baseline here. So what is the problem? The problem is that we have in democratic countries, we have illiberal actors that claim that they're actually democratic. So they claim democratic legitimacy. Here, like Orban, who actually coined this term illiberal democracy. So he said he wants to transform Hungary into an illiberal democracy. But is this actually possible? And when we look at what these people who claim that, who are challenging democracy, but at the same time are claiming that they are democratic, if we look in detail at what they are saying, and this is what I'm going to do now for a few minutes, then we can actually totally debunk this myth that these actors have some sort of democratic legitimacy. And I'm going to talk about this for a few minutes because I think it's really key for civic educators to get this message, to not fall in the trap of believing that these kind of actors, these kind of illiberals and authoritarians, that they have something that that resembles democratic legitimacy. On the contrary, they are undermining democratic norms and standards, as we can see in the US at the moment. So let's look at what they are saying. So first, here this is Gauland, the former leader of the far-right party AfD in Germany. They always claim like we are actually representing the majority or the silent majority or something like that. And this is often really just not true. In most European countries, this is not true. They represent some minority, so we should also not let them get away with this narrative. Then sometimes they win elections, like in Hungary, and then they say, if we do whatever the majority wants, then this is democratic. So I'm elected to office in a democratic procedure, so I can do whatever I want, basically. And this is clearly not true. I mean, we can go back to centuries of political thought on this. My favorite one here is Popper with his paradox of freedom that I'm sure a lot of you have talked about, have heard about before. He basically says that if freedom means that we can do anything, then we would also have the freedom to abolish freedom, and then there wouldn't be freedom anymore, right? So that means basically if you do something as a political leader that undermines the possibility of people to vote for somebody that's not yourself in the next elections, then this is not democratic. And this includes, for example, measures like what Orban has done in Hungary, where it's sort of concentrating most of the media into a foundation that is closely affiliated with the ruling party, with Fidesz. That reduces the chances of opposition actors to play on a level playing field before the next elections, and thus undermines the possibility of guaranteeing democracy in the long term. So not everything that people who have the majority behind them do is actually democratic. This is this paradox of freedom. So we have to be aware of that. Second, then we have some other countries and some leaders might get inspired by it. They basically just say, oh, look, we are elected in some sort of elections, but these are actually these are actually clearly rigged. For example, if major opposition candidates are in prison. And of course here, what we need to think about is that not all majority decisions can be called democratic, because we have what Dahl called the liberal prerequisites of democracy. And these are, for example, freedom of speech, freedom of the media, freedom of association, universal suffrage, clean elections. So these are all prerequisites to make sure that the people actually have the chance to make up their mind and to vote between alternatives. So, so we basically see that illiberals are not actually democratic, but illiberal actors are those actors that are not fully committed to the institutions and norms that make a democracy meaningful and enduring. So this is the key thing. So we need to have a democracy that's not just the shallow of just having majority vote elections. And we need to be sure that it's enduring, such as guaranteed by the civil liberties, the rule of law, and the separation of power. So all that sort of attacks on these things are also, I think, from a civic education perspective, where we normally say civic education should be non-partisan, but civic education should not be neutral. That means, from my perspective, that civic education should push back if actors in the classroom, in the political arena, in the civil society are trying to undermine civil liberties and the rule of law. Then civic education needs to take a clearer stand than I think it often has done in recent years. So, and this is sort of the spectrum that I'm talking about here, that we have clearly democratic actors, where for civic education, clearly the rule is not to be partisan, but then we have these illiberal actors, like I would say most of the far-right parties in Europe, also some far-left parties that we see across the world. Venezuela, for example, the ruling party Venezuela counts in this area. They're probably more over here by now. And then we have clearly authoritarian parties that clearly challenge democratic norms and rules. But all of these are in the undemocratic spectrum, and hence, from my perspective, civic education has the normative legitimacy of clearly speaking out against illiberal and authoritarian practices, and drawing a line here sort of in what can be tolerated and what cannot be tolerated. Then, of course, these illiberals also benefit from polarization, but I don't have the time to go into that now more in detail, but that's another key area where they benefit from. So what's the strategy? How can we react to these kind of challenges? We're proposing in this guidebook a strategy of critical engagement. As I just said, tolerance is not enough, because if we tolerate them, this is this paradox of tolerance, right? If we tolerate these illiberal actors too much, they will become so powerful that they are in a position to actually undermine key democratic rules, and then democracy will not last, will not endure. It's a bit like what the US is going through at the moment. So from my perspective, no, tolerance is definitely not enough. On the other hand, if we use the militant strategies, right? So for all the Germans here, like the pure sort of wehrhafte Demokratie, so militant strategies that call out, for example, for not allowing illiberal parties to exist anymore, for severely restricting the freedom of association of those people, that is also tricky, because they are often, they're very good at sort of building up this democratic facade and making sure that they don't use the terms, the symbols, the signals that would clearly place them in the authoritarian spectrum. So if we use militant strategies against them, then the problem is often that we actually strengthen them normatively. So rather, I would advocate for critical engagement, and here really civic education has a key role to play. We need critical engagement that debunks illiberalism. So that's why I also started relatively long with a theoretical foundation. So we need to find a narrative, a good story, how we can debunk it. And then we shouldn't fuel polarization at the same time. We should be careful not to legitimize illiberal ideas by just listening to them, by treating them like any other policy idea that we're thinking about. And here it's very important for me to emphasize that I'm not talking about liberalism or illiberalism here, as sometimes the term is used in the US political spectrum, where it signals some sort of liberal, signals something lefty or something like that, or culturally liberal. This is not how we're using this term here. Illiberal here is really in the sense of undermining key democratic norms, such as no political violence, such as free and fair elections, respecting vote counts, for example, and all these things. And then we should try to pull those people. And here I really think civic education can step up its game to really carefully think about what are those people that are sort of on this threshold of falling into this illiberal spectrum, and how can we pull them back? How can we engage with this group of people that we can still reach? The leaders of these kind of groups, they are ideologically set. Of course, we can't engage with them, but there is sort of a group around them that of people that are moderate maybe ideologically, that are only weakly affiliated, or also that are potential supporters. So these are the groups that we need to reach out to. And I know this is for civic education, this is very, very tricky, because they tend not to voluntarily sign up for activities. So this is for me, this is after like these years of work now with this illiberal challenge in Europe, this is the key issue that we need to solve. How do we reach this target group? And how do we reach them, and how can we talk with them about attitudes and get them to change their behavior? So how can we do that? We have in the resource guide, civic education is one of many tools in this area of critical engagement, where we try to delegitimize illiberal ideas. And we also have been talking about political parties, civil society organizations, and the media here particularly, and we see it again in all these debates and during the recent days regarding the US election. The media has a key role to contextualize, not to just repeat hate and lies, but to contextualize it, to debunk it. So that's very clear. But here today we want to focus on the civic education part. So what does all this theoretical thinking mean for civic education? I mean, first of all, this is work together here with Dominic Hirndorf. Civic education is not neutral from our perspective. It should be clearly in favor of democratic rules and against illiberals that undermine democracy. But of course, it should be non-partisan, obviously. I mean, that is the standard. And we know, I mean, you all know that much better than I do, civic education is underfunded everywhere in Europe, and it's often also not recognized as a tool by many institutions. So we really need greater emphasis. It fosters resilience. I mean, you've been talking about that for the last few days, so I think I don't need to emphasize that here. And we actually sort of, I mean, we have some of the principles and tools already. I mean, here we were just repeating something from the Amadeo and Antonio Stiftung, where they again emphasize that there's not that there's sort of that it's clear that there's that civic education should not be partisan, but it doesn't need that it mean that it needs to be neutral. We've summarized several ideas for civic education within school. I think here really sort of it was relatively easy for our resource guide to find some ideas of what could be done. The problem here really seems to, from my perspective, seems to be lacking resources, lacking training of civic educators in many schools around Europe, those actually teaching social sciences, politics, civic education, however it's called in the respective curriculums, don't have a proper training in it. And there's so many really, really cool methods for civic education in school. I think I don't have to go into detail. We'll also talk more about practical ideas here later. But what I want to talk about for the last 2 minutes is really that from my perspective, the key really is that we beef up civic education for adults in sports clubs and church communities and interest groups. So where we really can try to find the right messenger to reach those groups that might be vulnerable to illiberal ideas, that might be on the fringe of these kind of groups. We've summarized several examples in this guide. We will talk later here in this workshop about some more. So this is really key, I think, to emphasize this more. And here in particularly, and this is work then now together with Lydia Finze, we think more needs to be done in the online space. We need to find tools to expose people to a diverse range of information that can mitigate this problem of filter bubbles. There's, for example, a great NGO in the US that has engaged with people across polarized groups on social media, sort of went into their groups and challenged them with different information, of course, in sort of a very limited scale, but this is something I think that could be scaled up and improved. Yeah, and then of course we really need to get our narrative right, and this is all, again why I started quite extensively on the theory part, because I've been approached quite often by school teachers, for example, by other civic educators that were like, oh, but this party, now in the German case the AfD, right? Well, they have been elected democratically, so we should treat them like any other party. And I'm just saying, no, you shouldn't. I mean, you have the duty to be non-partisan, but when it goes against key democratic principles, you also have the duty to defend the Constitution, to defend those key principles of human rights. So I think we really sort of need to have argumentation training, need to think about more reframing, how this can be done also to actually reach this target group when we think more carefully about it. And we definitely should avoid to repeat the rhetorical frames of these illiberals. So this is super important. But just sort of as a bullet here, and much more could be said on this. So let me just close by just showing that what I've been talking about here is not sort of only my own work, but I've been working on this with a big team at the Wiedem Institute, and I'm really grateful to them. So thank you very much for listening, and I look very much forward to the discussion. I'll share the link in a second.
Thank you so much, Anna. Of course, it's quite difficult to present such a report in such a compact manner, and I think you did very, very well. And before we are starting with some questions or some discussion, I would first like to invite Yael Ohana to react on this presentation of Anna. Yael Ohana is a specialist of intercultural political education, international youth work and youth policy. And she founded and runs a small independent educational consultancy called Frankly Speaking. And we found Yael ready to formulate a short reply. So please, Yael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And if I may also congratulate Anna on an excellent presentation and a really encompassing way of viewing the challenge that is posed by illiberalism, or the development of illiberalism and the development of authoritarianism in Europe and further afield for a field like civic education. So as Tatiana mentioned, my background, my professional background is in the area of political intercultural education through international youth work. That means essentially a form of civic education with young adults in the wider Europe, so not only in the EU, and obviously also in the out of school sector, no? So not inside formal education. And I think the reason I've been asked to respond today is because we've been working with the German National Agency of the Youth for Europe program on a project called Critical Youth Citizenship, which really focuses on the conditions through which different forms of civic education can, let's say, achieve this resilience of democracy or democratic thinking, democratic values towards illiberalism. And that report, or rather that paper, is available. I can put the link into the chat a little bit later. And everything I say here probably, or rather I would like to say that everything I say here goes back very much to the work that project has been developing over the last 4 years. I probably should out myself as also the representative of the Open Society Foundations, although I don't do civic education in the context of the Open Society Foundations, but I do work in its Berlin office. And so, of course, I'm also aware of the VDEM project and of this marvelous report. Many colleagues have worked on it as well with Anna and her team. Anna, I would like to ask you, if possible, could you please put back up your presentation, because there are 1 or 2 slides I would like to make direct reference to. In particular, if possible, the slide with the dartboard to begin with, the one with the concentric circles. Change illiberals' attitudes, change illiberals' behavior, mobilize Democrats. If you could, that would be great. So, yeah, okay. Confronting illiberalism and being strategic. Yeah, I think so. I would like to talk about, on the one hand, some of the limits of civic education, right? Because I think very quickly we get into the sort of the sense of, if only we had more money and more resources, we would be able to solve this. And on the other hand, I would also like to talk about things that civic education is able to do, and which unfortunately sort of are very much under the radar. And even when civic education has resources, they're not given enough attention, and I think would be very useful in this context. So if the if the idea with civic education and the role that it can play has something to do with attitudes, behaviors, and mobilization, okay, this target group is indeed very difficult to access. But there are forms of youth work and there are forms of civic education through youth work which have some experience of working on this. So I think I would like to, in the first place, if we want to talk about this particular target group, the moderate, the weakly affiliated, and potential supporters, I think we have to look to other formats of education necessarily than school. No? And here I would like to make reference to formats of education such as outreach youth work, mobile youth work, work with extraction of young men from extremist right-wing organizations, work with extraction of young people from sects. this is work that has been done and developed as a form of social work. Actually, a lot of work has been done on it in the 70s and 80s, and somehow we've kind of forgotten that it exists. Notably in Europe, there are still some organizations, and the Amadeo Antonio Stiftung is very much involved in work with some of those organizations that are doing really interesting work on helping young people to leave extremist organizations, right? And as such, that kind of work, right, really helps us to understand who those people are. Who are those moderate, weakly affiliated and potential supporters, right? What are the things that make them tip, and what are the things that would make them tip back, right? What are the things that are missing in their lives? What are the things that are missing in their education? What are the things that that drive them into that direction in the first place? And those types of youth work and education are very much underfunded. They're very much under the radar, and they're more often than not under pressure, right? And that's because, apart from anything else, and this brings me to my second point, which it relates to the limits of civic education in education systems, because national governments control education systems, right? And education systems also have specific functions for national governments. And when a society already is on the, on the spectrum, going in the direction of illiberal democracy, one of the first things that tends to happen, and it's not for no reason that the right-wing parties in particular are very interested in education ministries, education is one of the first things that they try to own, that they try to have as an area of competence, even when they have, let's say, only a minority part in government. And this is an important point, because it determines the functions and the possibilities of formal education, right? You know, the approach that can be undertaken in national education systems towards civic education or towards education for democracy is something which is very much a political issue, right? It's also a political battleground. And so if we can go to the slide whereby with the graphic adapted from the Amadeo Antonio Stiftung, I would like to talk a little bit about that. These principles for civic education are of course extremely important and make absolute sense. I think the difficulty is, how do you get to the point where actually civic education in schools functions that way, right? If a national government has decided that the content of civic education will be something else, okay, not all countries consider civic education to be a matter of democratic education. There's also the whole area of patriotic education, and in principle, you can put any kind of values onto civic education, right? And the point is, who controls that decision making? So in illiberal societies, the limits of civic education in schools are very large, okay? And in addition, education and civic education are a matter of socialization, right? It's not for no reason that we talk about starting young with civic education. Unfortunately, much civic education is actually addressed at young people who are already a little bit older, and who, I mean, the kinds of things that are being transmitted through the education system, even when there is no specific civic, let's say, course to be taken in school, are also extremely important. We're talking about extremely long-lasting socialization processes. And so this whole thing about changing attitudes, right, is extremely important. But really, to change those attitudes, you need to have access to children, to small children, right? And civic education and that kind of democratic approach needs to be present in the school. You can't learn democracy if you don't live democracy. Okay, and that goes far beyond things like even debate or competing ideas. It goes to the very core of what let's say a nation, a country, a state wishes to transmit as its image of itself to young children and future citizens. No? And so in some, I mean, we have to also get to grips with the problem of the idea of the school as a space for democracy or as a democratic space. Schools aren't actually democratic spaces. They can be made democratic. They can be made to function in a democratic way, and they can be made to, how would I say, address a democratic and civic purpose. But for that, there have to be decisions of a political nature, and these are decisions which are very often missing. No, these are decisions which either are not made. How would I say? These are decisions that do not lie in the hands of educators necessarily. In fact, in most places in Europe, to the best of my knowledge, most educators do not have that much leeway, right, to decide what they put into civic education. Look, in some countries, in many countries in Europe, you can't be an educator if you wear a headscarf, okay? And in such circumstances, that's a political issue in and of itself. That's a question of civic education in and of itself. How you discuss something like that, whether or not you use caricatures of Mohammed in the classroom, right, is a matter of how civic education is conceptualized. No? And so there's much more to be said about the role of civic education in schools than just we need more of it, and that it shouldn't necessarily, this neutrality thing. So I think if we are really talking about civic education in schools and elsewhere, because all of the actors that are mentioned in the report are actually in some way or another doing some form of civic education, that being the media, political parties do it, and so on and so forth. We need to talk about what is the content of civic education, right? And what is the approach that is being taken to civic education inside of school and outside of school. I think much more attention needs to be paid to the role of the other actors, and in particular associative life. And if we talk about, sorry, Anna, if you could move to the slide about civic education for adults. If we talk about civic education for adults, I think there's really a lot to be learned from the citizen engagement movement, right, which is very diverse and but really on the local level, people doing stuff with other people in their community that makes sense to them, right, which is in the pre-political space. Okay, again, you can't learn democracy if you don't live democracy. And this is the kind of thing that's not getting enough attention. So in terms of availability of funding, in terms of recognition for what it does, in terms of engagement then with also the political sphere, right? Because another big question, and this brings me to my third point, is how all of those actors work together strategically in the field of civic education, for civic education, to make sure that it happens and that it's broader. And then finally, I would like to say something about the approach or the content of civic education. Often, and I know that our institution, Open Society Foundations, for example, for very many years, promoted an approach to civic education which is founded on debate, right? And the idea of freedom of speech and engagement and confrontation with different ideas. And this is all very well, right? But it can't stop there. There's much more to it, okay? You can't debate somebody's, you know, I'm not sure you can debate somebody's race, okay? And yet something like race, especially in a context like the United States and even in Europe, okay, is one of the key cleavages around which liberal, illiberal, and so on and so forth is playing out. So we need an approach to civic education that focuses on confrontation, controversy, critique, critical thinking, that builds the confidence of young people and adults to engage, and that promotes change, right? And this is critical emancipatory education. And this is something which we have experience of over 45 years in Europe and in the United States. And I think schools need to come back to working with that. And so do other civic educators, a more political approach. And I think this resource will be very useful for that. So thank you, and sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you so much, Yael, for your reaction on this. And of course, we don't want to miss the praxis, but I might assume that are now also some people who would like from the praxis to have at least a comment or a question. So let's have 5 minutes for some reactions from the audience. Is there a lot of agreement as I see? Anyone? No? Or are we turning first to the praxis? I assume that a lot of educators are outside there. So did you recognize until now what was said from the researchers, let's say? Or is your daily praxis quite different? So nothing urgent? Okay, then I suggest, since we are already a bit behind time, that we go first to the praxis examples, and then we might have some time left, but not to leave them out, let's say. So the first project we have is presented by Dorothea Retail from Hungary. Dorothea is an independent scholar working in the field of gender, sexuality and education in Hungary, and her research interests include gender equality in education and the intersectional reproduction of social inequalities in education. And she will share with us the project on civic education in schools from Croatia. So please, Dorothea, feel free to share your example with us.
Thank you for the introduction, but I'm not going to introduce a project from Croatia, but from Hungary.
Sorry, misunderstanding.
Yes. And I will introduce this project as a member of Labris Lesbian Education, which has been involved in civic education for 20 years. Let me share my screen. I'm going to tell you about something that's just happening to us right now, a little bit unexpectedly. And so analysis is not very developed yet, but I will show you illiberalism in the making, sort of. I'll try to share these slides. I hope you can see my screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. So this is about a fairy tale book that we have just published, which this is what it looks like. And the title is Wonderland Belongs to Everyone, or yeah, something. It could be translated like that. And this was published in September this year. And the idea was that we provide a collection of fairy tales, rewritten fairy tales with minority or disadvantaged characters. And this is, we have had a school program called Getting to Know LGBT People since 2000. This book is not really part of it, but the school program is mostly for secondary school students. And we were thinking of starting how to start education for, you know, values of acceptance and diversity, and earlier age groups, because exactly because of the current illiberalism and neoconservative values being so widespread in Hungary, and there's a lot of hatred against various social groups and a very intolerant attitude. So we came up with this idea of this fairy tale book, and which contains 17 stories, 8 by amateur and, sorry, I got it wrong, 9 by professional authors. And we have also designed some lesson plans. Some teachers, our teacher colleagues, designed some lesson plans for each tale, so they are openly available on our website and can be used by teachers. Our school program has been in the focus of neo-Nazi groups, and also not directly, but indirectly by the Fidesz educational government for the last 2 or 3 years. So they were watching when this book were going to be published and jumped on it immediately. And what happened was there's a small far-right party in the parliament, and the representative of this party made a book shredding performance where she put the book in a book shredder. It was a media performance. And then, so that was the first thing. I will tell you soon what reactions it produced. After that, there were 2 demonstrations by neo-Nazi groups connected to this small party. There was a street demonstration in front of our office, and then there was a really ugly disruption of a public story reading event. And then soon after, the same person shred another recently published children's book, which was authored by a lesbian writer, and the story included a child with 2 mothers. And then there was a petition of, maybe you know it, it's a sort of an international group called Citizen Go. They get petitions signed over different countries. So this Citizen Go group got over 80,000 people to sign a petition to ban the book, which hasn't happened yet. And then we got somebody kind of sued us at the Consumer Protection Office, which is under the government, so it's not an independent organization anymore. And we were sued on the basis that the book doesn't contain, that the book does contain non-traditional gender roles, and this is not indicated on the book. That was the complaint. The procedure is going on at the moment. And then the Citizen Go petition authors launched another campaign where bookshop assistants were harassed in person and on the phone. They posted posters and stickers on bookshops saying material corrupting children is sold here. There were a lot of attacks in the governmental media. In one of them, we were called something similar to a pedophile organization. So now we are running, so we have just sued the author. And then came the Prime Minister, Orbán, who gave a speech. One of his, he gives a speech every Sunday morning, and in one of his speech, he was asked about the book, and he explained that Hungarians are very patient with homosexual people, so they should appreciate that, but we should stay away from their children, as if we didn't have children, of course. So I will talk a little bit more about this protecting our children discourse. So he launched this discursive attack on us, by defining the discourse to follow, and immediately some governmental officials, went into homophobic speeches. The book is not an LGBT fairy tale book. It contains some tales which have LGBT characters, but the book was, without people reading it, it was immediately branded as an LGBT fairy tale book because we, a lesbian organization, published it. And then there were 3 mayors who are Fidesz members who banned the book in their cities' kindergartens, which they cannot do, but they did. And then there was another petition launched by some organizations, family-focused organizations, to regulate school programs like ours, access to schools more strictly. And in the background, there has been for the past few years a tacit governmental support of these neo-Nazi groups. They are never condemned for their neo-Nazi activities. So this is a very worrying trend. And so all the public discourse is centered on the idea that we harm children. As I said, the book was immediately branded to be an LGBT fairy tale book, and it was said that homosexuality has no place in children's lives and books. And the idea is very widespread that children will be converted into gays if they read fairy tales with gay characters. And what was really curious was it's an intentionally intersectional book, and we got accused by pushing gay propaganda in a Trojan horse manner by using other minorities to promote homosexual agenda with children. And as I mentioned, we have even been called something similar to a pedophile organization. However, the phenomenon when the cannon shoots back happened. And so, because the book shredding is reminiscent of Nazi and communist times, when books got damaged. And this really triggered a lot of people, and a sort of movement or like public protest emerged very quickly. The book has become a bestseller. We have sold 15,000 copies in one and a half months, and another 15,000 is expected to be sold till the end of 2020, which is a huge number in Hungary for children's books. And somehow it seems that the book has become a symbol of resistance against hatred, against intolerance, against social exclusion. We have been approached by international publishers. People went to bring, chocolates for harassed shop assistants. We got a lot of positive feedback from parents and teachers. There was a petition signed by nearly 2,000 psychologists in support of the book. And so buying the book has become a sort of an act of taking a stand by, even by people who would otherwise be not active politically, or not active in civic matters or citizenship matters. We have been discussing with other NGOs further cooperation based on the book. So this is giving us a little hope that maybe something got triggered, and that maybe there is hope to return to some democratic framework in the end. So thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't take up too much time. These are our email addresses if you want to contact us, and we have the book has a Facebook page. And I'll stop. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothea. I assume that also on HowSpace, all the links can be found for the participants later. And let's try at least 5 minutes for a short discussion after this presentation of harsh reality, after all this nice theory we learned about in the beginning of our panel. Who would like to take the floor? Maybe Anne, what would you say after all you know about your research you did on the world? I mean, what would be your recommendation for Dorothea? How to deal with this reality?
Well, first, what I want to say is that I'm really impressed, and I really want to commend you for this great work. I mean, this must be really difficult, particularly with this personal harassments also, and I mean, we know that those that fight the kind of activities that you're doing, that they also like violence and all these things. So it's a personal risk that you're taking, and yeah, I think we really need more people like that. So that's clear. And I also like that you see some hope here. I mean, look to Poland. No, I mean, nobody would have thought that now all of a sudden, after years of democratic erosion, so many people can take to the streets triggered by one court ruling. So I think it's really right to look at these kind of that's more like from the studies that we do in general as democracy researchers. We always see that these kind of democratization movements are triggered by some sort of events, like a book being burned, or some sort of court ruling, or a stolen election, or these kind of things. And our data clearly shows that actually during the last year, we had more and stronger pro-democratic protests around the world than ever before. So this is really the way of getting democracy back. So that's what I want to say to this. It's really, but I don't want to be in your shoes. So, but I really commend that.
So an encouraging moment. I saw Michelle Schild from Luxembourg who wanted to participate. I saw a hand. No?
No, I was just clapping.
Okay. So another encouraging sign. Anyone else who would like to comment, maybe out of his or her own experience out there in formal or informal education? No? Okay. Then I take the opportunity first to present you the second project from the praxis we have. And then if there is enough time left, we might enter into questions. First we had now something from formal education. We have now an example from informal education. It will be presented by Chantal Suissa-Rune from Amsterdam. Chantal is a social entrepreneur and founding director of Unite, a social enterprise to promote conflict, transformation, dialogue, and bring people and communities together. And at the same time, she works also as an associate partner at Roetslaven, specialist in the Harvard method for interest-based negotiation. And Chantal will present to us the project Get to Know Your Neighbors, a project from Amsterdam, aiming that young Muslims, Christians and Jews and others learn about each other and are confronted with their own prejudices and stereotypes. Please, Chantal, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody hears me well.
Yes.
I just want to make a short remark to the former presenter. It really hit me what I saw, because it's maybe strange, but like this weekend there's the Kristallnacht memorial in my country. And it's like, I don't want to compare it, but I feel like there's a lot of like illiberalism moving on in Europe. There's a lot of tension and a lot of basically polarization going on, and it's really worrisome. And I think I really want to applaud to you that you actually pushed through, and that now so many people are buying this book, because it almost feels like an act of resistance. All these people saying like, no, we don't want this, we want freedom, we want to be ourselves as we are, and we're going to order this book. So yay, I hope everybody will buy it. We'll definitely check it out to see, or if it will be in translation or whatever. So about my project a little bit, actually there are a few, but I will just show one. I'm gonna try to share my screen, and I hope, since it's a short movie, it will work. Actually, I didn't do the movie myself. Networks Overcoming Anti-Semitism did it. And in the movie, you'll see mainly two projects, which is the Getting to Know Your Neighbors and the Muslim-Jewish Leadership Project. I'm on the, basically, the fine line between formal education and informal education. So actually, it started as informal education, the Getting to Know Your Neighbors project, against all kinds of forms of discrimination or prejudice. But now it's the schools that partake in it do so on, the schools are voluntary, but the students have to come. It's mandatory for them, which is amazing, because we get all kinds of people that really don't want to be there and still get to interact with them and try to, you know, invite them into the conversation. And the other project, the Muslim-Jewish project, is really, really informal. Let me see. God, I hope this works. Right, screen. Okay. Let's see. Does everybody see this? Now the question is if you hear it. You hear it? Okay. See, stop share. Yes, I'm back. Okay, so this is just a short clip, and it's better introduction I couldn't think of. I cannot say it better in 2 minutes myself. The Getting to Know Your Neighbors project actually started because I was very active in the dialogue committee of a synagogue, and I was active in education. And in education, we have the Dutch Constitution, which starts with Article 1. And the first article of the Dutch Constitution is that discrimination is prohibited. And all people should be treated equal, regardless of their ethnical background, sex, etc., faith. And very important article, obviously. And there were a lot of projects in schools that were aiming towards fighting one of these aspects exclusively. So either fighting homophobia or fighting anti-Semitism, but nothing, there was no project for everything together. And then I started at the Intercultural Alliance, working with the SEGI program, and which is a classroom of difference, which addressed each and every form of exclusion. And that was a really amazing way to go into classrooms and work with teachers and with students. And but it was intercultural, although we addressed all forms of exclusion. And more often I got the question, what about issues within the Jewish community? What about anti-Semitism? Can we do something interfaith? But you know, the separation of church and state, and how do you do that? And we decided to do something, start something from the synagogue, inviting people in, because we had a lot of tensions. We had a documentary maker who was killed by an Islamist extremist. We had a very right-wing politician who was killed, and the backlash of that, and so on and so forth, and Charlie Hebdo and everything. We decided to, instead of build up higher walls, which the Jewish community for obvious historic reasons tends to do, we decided to invite students in from the school next to us, literally our neighbors. And there were a lot of diverse kids with immigrant backgrounds who had the most crazy ideas about Jews. And we thought, we don't just want to change their ideas or whatever, we want to really engage in an open conversation. So we just started inviting the school's kids in, the neighboring school. And that was such a big success, maybe because of the formula we used, young people in their 20s and 30s from the community, addressing these kids in a really informal way. Started with a video clip with all the crazy, hysterical, and funny stereotypes about us, selves, Jews. And they were like, what? They're showing Family Guy and South Beach, all this, all this great South Park, Family Guy, Sex and the City, Borat. And they're like, you're showing these stuff about yourselves? And that's why they felt the ice was broken and they could actually relax. Because, you know, we know what's out there on YouTube and the internet. And then we just engage in a really open discussion. So what do you think about when you hear the word Jew without their name written on the paper? And you feel free to write, to draw, to do whatever you want. And a lot of things came back, really nice things about religion or Hanukkah or whatever, but also really horrible things like IS stands for Israeli State, because it's a Jewish conspiracy to make Muslims look bad, or all Jews are really rich and really crooked, and they rule the banks and they rule the world. But I love it when that happens, because at least then you can work with it. Because when it's vocalized, so I always just, we ask questions, so tell me more about it, and how do you see that? And sometimes you counter it with another narrative, or with storytelling, or with sources, or whatever we've got, we feel intuitively what we should use. But we also ask them, what are your fears? Have you ever experienced exclusion? Do you feel you can get any job you would want to? Because we're working with a lot of minorities, and they have the same anxieties and things. And because it's such a interhuman interaction, it's also about food and dating and who can you take home or who can't you take home. It's so personal that it works. And then we invite them into the actual synagogue, and they can ask whatever they always or never wanted to know. And we explain them everything. We even show them the Torah scrolls, and it always has such a nice buzz, even with the toughest kids. that actually said when they were leaving home that day, I'm not going to a synagogue full of Jews. I don't want to go there. But they have to because the school is giving them a note. And if they don't go, they get a low note. So they just go because the school says they have to go. But at that point, often where the biggest frustration is, the biggest interest lays there as well. And that's a huge opportunity. So basically to finish this up, love this project. We started in Amsterdam, but we're active in 3 cities in the Netherlands, really wanting to expand maybe even internationally. We've had 14,000 students so far coming from all kinds of levels. And because it was so successful with the kids from between like 12 year up to 25, up to youngsters, we decided to also make an elementary school program like that. But now COVID came and mixed everything up, and we're trying to do some stuff online, but it's never the same as looking a person really in the eye and thinking, hey, she's not a monster. Actually, she's pretty nice. And we end up with coffee and tea and like typical sweet Dutch Jewish food, like cakes, butter cakes and stuff. And it's a really simple formula. It lasts like 1.5 hours each visit. And well, it just makes me really happy. I'm active in it for almost 10 years and I can see it evaluating. And it's a sign of hope. And we invite the world and we get to know the world and they get to know us. And we talk about literally everything. So that is that project. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Chantal. I can only emphasize that everything what you said, since there is a colleague of ours who wrote a book about her experiences with this project. And it's so nice to see the experience of young people and how they are really confronted with their own stereotypes they have on the other. And how easy it is actually to work on that in 1.5 hours. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
And we have stereotypes. I just wanted to add, we have stereotypes.
Of course.
It takes vulnerability. We learn from these kids. They teach us stuff and they feel that we learn from them. I think that's equally important. Thank you, Tatjana.
Of course, thank you. So do we have any questions or comments from our audiences? Otherwise, of course, you're also free to comment towards each other.
Let's see. Oh, I see a question from about France. How we tackled the France issue, the recent murder of the teacher. Unfortunately, we haven't had a group since that because our COVID restriction just became tougher. But what I am personally doing is I am also teaching teachers how to deal with current affairs, how to tackle conspiracy theories, and how to engage in non-violent communication discussions with their children, actually really trying to address the things and being able to give a counter narrative without punishing them, without having them lose face, basically. And it's a lot of teachers, especially the ones that are mentors or are dealing with like civil society issues, are really troubled now, and some are really actually scared, like literally afraid to address it. So I'm trying to help them address it. That's most that I can do for now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, only a lot of things, not that much question I see at the moment.
I would like to ask, thank you for the presentation. And I'm not sure if I missed it or because I was trying to send my PowerPoint to Constance meanwhile, whether you also work with parents or whether the young people you work with, what kind of impact they might make on their families.
So we did like 2 researches about this project already with various universities. So we don't, unfortunately not yet, work directly with the parents, but what you see is that kids talk to their parents and they give us back what they tell at home. So at the dinner table or at the breakfast table, they actually do engage in conversation with their parents. Like one of the questions was like, would you now have dinner at a Jewish person's home? And many people before the project said, no way, super scary. And after they're like, yay, willingly, right? So, and with the younger kids, sometimes we do meet the parents, but usually we work with the teachers. So it's really hard to get home. Sometimes in schools we get invited to engage in a parent information evening, and that's a way to meet the parents, but that's like really rare, unfortunately. Yeah, but it's important though, Thea. I totally agree with you.
Thanks.
If I may, Tatiana. Yes, you're muted, but I
yes.
think this was a yes.
Yes, please do.
Great. No, I thought, well, first, I also want to congratulate Chantal on this great project. I mean, it looks really like something that we need in these challenging times. And then second, I thought maybe if I may sort of respond a bit to Johanna's comments from the beginning on my presentation. I just want to make like one quick point. Like I think I would say I agree with almost everything that she said, and particularly that you can't learn democracy if you don't live democracy. I think that applies like outside of school as well as inside of school. I think I was a little short on that sort of in my presentation, where I emphasized mainly that we just need more and point without sort of probably making this conceptual point very clear that indeed also social science research really supports this point that if you have a feeling of political efficacy, what we call political efficacy, so the feeling of how you can actually influence the political process yourself, your local surroundings, but also the national political process, that leads also to a greater support of democracy and a lower likelihood of supporting illiberal groups, illiberal ideas. So I really think sort of the sort of programmatically the main way for civic education inside and outside of schools is indeed this whole issue of student participation, for example, student parliaments, the right to decision making at the local level, civic engagement also at the local level. I think there are really some key entry points there. Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Anna. So, any other comments, questions? There is Alexandro Cavalli.
Yes, I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate with Dorothea and Chantal, because they posed two cases of prejudices, gender prejudices on the one side, and then say religious ethnic prejudices on the other side. I think that the theme of prejudices should be one of the key issues in civic education and in political education, since it is a topic which covers a lot of situations in every country. We all have national prejudices. The Germans against the French, the Italians against the Germans, the Polish, and so on. I think that we should try to develop ways how to attack prejudices in their extremely wide appearances, and should propose for the next meetings of nature that special attention should be given to prejudices, since I think that we live in a period of resurgence of prejudices, not of abolishment or decline of prejudices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandro. I think we have one more question, one more comment. We have time. Anyone? There is Gal Levy.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm speaking from Israel, so I have a kind of attachment to almost everything that was mentioned here, and thanking the various presenters for very enlightening presentations. I want, I think, to follow up on Alessandro's comment, because, and especially in relation to Chantal's presentation, I would like to pinpoint one aspect that I'm always worried when we're talking about prejudice, is that many times we are kind of taking this to the cultural realm and away from the political realm. And I always have the fear, the scholarly and the political and the personal fear, that once we do that, we kind of neutralize ourselves. And I think it goes along with Yael Ohana's comments earlier. And I think that it's really important that when we're trying to tackle prejudice and anti-Semitism and racism and gender discrimination, etc. And I was impressed to see it on the Hungarian presentation. It's very important that we keep on politicizing it and remembering that it's not just a matter of, okay, we are going, and sorry, Chantal, I'm kind of a little bit caricaturing your work, but I know that there must be much more than that. But it's not just like meeting together in the afternoon and, you know, and having Hanukkah donuts and whatever on the other side. It must be kind of politicizing the issues that stand behind this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Can I quickly react?
Yes.
For 2 minutes?
1 minute, Chantal, 1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, because now, and you're right, that's why, like in the Jewish Muslim leadership program, it's much more politically based. Like they go out together to help refugees, they challenge the far right politicians, they go against like the right-leaning discourse of exclusion and bigotry and hatred and anti-immigration. So it depends a bit, right, on the age groups and the level of political affiliation to the various programs. But yes, we should definitely not forget about that. We should engage in that.
Yeah, just a short reaction from me as well. I mean, we have always been a political organization in the sense that, you know, we are dealing with citizenship issues, but it seems that for the moment in Hungary, LGBT people are the new enemy after migrants and Roma people. It's our turn now, so everything we do becomes political, whether we want to or not. And we, of course, we have to, you know, stand there and be political all the time, practically. And even though we didn't intend this book to be political, we expected some extreme right protests, but we didn't expect what happened. So the large scale uproar about it, but this is really, it became very over politicized, which makes it more difficult to do our citizenship education part. So sometimes, you know, if you don't lead the political discourse but become, you know, a recipient of, you know, what's you know, being told about you in a political way, then it's very difficult, especially when the discourse is, you know, framed by illiberal actors. It's very difficult to just, because it's always them who dictate the discourse and then you just respond. So it's really hard to be political in a way that you will create some discourse. And I think that this time we somehow more or less manage this. So we are not just responding, but sending a message that acceptance is important, you know, and homophobia is not okay, and it's not okay to discriminate any minorities, and it seems that we are making a point, and that's why it's a for us it's a new situation as well, that we are making a point, not just reacting to attacks, you know, and
Thank you, Doretta. Sorry for interrupting you, but I think we have to stop here. But of course, we are with you, and we hope we can support you from far with strength. Sorry, but we have to end here. Like always, the discussions are beginning to warm up at the end of such a session. But I hope a lot of you will stay in contact with each other. And please also don't hesitate as the audience, for example, to contact the organizers if you are more interested in a project or a person. And also in House Space, you might find a lot of links. I would like very much to thank our speakers for the insightful discussion and their presentations. As I said already, the ones who are logged in Home Space might leave also suggestions, comments.
And welcome back to the live stage here at the Berlin Congress Center. And we're going to be now initiating our third round of Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action. We have 3 further pitches for you to listen to, and I'm going to introduce our first group, or pitch 1. And this is the Aurelia Cerf from Bellevue. Do we have our Zoom participants on board already? Okay, I think this is just going to take a moment. And I hope that you have all been involved in interesting sessions and been able to participate actively and have been enjoying the possibilities of using House Space in an interactive manner. So I think that we're ready. We appear to have our Zoom participants with us here for the pitches. No? Okay. I'm sure it will only take a moment. Ah, there we are. This is looking now very good. Okay, so we're going to begin with Aurelia Cerf, so from Bellevue. And who are we speaking to there on this?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great.
Would you like to share your screen with your presentation?
Yes.
That's looking very good. So I'm going to hand over to you with a short countdown. If you'd like to just click through to the first page and just say yes when you're ready to start.
Yes.
Wonderful. So 3, 2, 1, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, hello everyone, I'm Aurélie Cerf. I work in the Bellevue Museum, which is located in Brussels, in Belgium. The Bellevue is actually much more than a museum about Belgium and its history. It's actually also a center for democracy. So it's a project with an ambitious societal goal, which is to support education on democracy and citizenship for the public at large, and especially young people. We foster critical thinking about society in the way we work with young audiences and encourage historical conscience to give them a better understanding of Belgian society and the challenges we face today. How do we try to achieve our goals? Because this is an ambitious goal. How do we achieve that? To encourage critical thinking and develop historical awareness about the democratic workings of our society. Actually, what you can see now on the screen is one of our most important tools to achieve that. This is our thematical permanent exhibition on Belgium and its history, and also on the societal challenges of today. So we have different thematical rooms in the museum about different topics, such as democracy, prosperity, solidarity, pluralism, immigration, language, and Europe. Yes, also what we do is developing different tools for every target audiences in order that they can visit the exhibition and the museum with an appropriate tool. And in addition to that, we also organize workshops and teacher trainings on democratic, political, and citizenship education. So as you can see here on the screen, these are pictures of one of our workshop, which is named Democracy. You can see that young people are really taking part and are really interactive in our workshops. And we also give workshops about different other topics, such as justice system, media, citizen participation, historical consciousness, and financial education. We give these workshops and trainings in Brussels, but also through Belgium, and since the pandemic, also digitally. The methods that we use with the young audiences to work on these topics are participation and also a lot of role playing, because this is through discussion, interaction, and dialogue that we can create and stimulate experience and understanding, and that we can change indifference to interest and stimulate really the critical thinking and change prejudice to nuance. And I think I'm at the end of my time, so I'm going to give the floor back to you, Tanya, our moderator. Thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful start to the last of our 3 pitches. I'm now going to hand over for the second pitch to Maximilian from Ella Eberstein. And the topic Maximilian will be focusing on is managing Bildungslandschaften, so educational landscapes, for sustainable development. I'd just like to say a word to the Field Institute that Maximilian is representing. So the Field Institute focuses on research and education projects and activities aimed at the acquisition of key competencies for successfully shaping daily life around supporting sustainable and democratic social development. Maximilian, you've started sharing your screen, I see. Are you ready?
I'm completely ready, thanks.
You're absolutely ready then. Over to you, Maximilian.
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Max, working for the Fields Institute, and as Tanya said, just right now we realize projects that focus on supporting sustainable and democratic social development. And currently we are working on a project that is funded by the Federal German Environmental Agency, where we develop a qualification program for educational managers of so-called ESD Bildungslandschaften, which is tailored to the specific needs of education managers working in the regional context for sustainable and democratic future. So in our view, the aim of modern educational work is to attain necessary competencies to manage and master collective challenges. So it's all around, it centers around empowering individuals in different respective areas. And we know justice in education for sustainable development, or in citizenship education, or in other contemporary concepts, it focuses on the interconnectedness and complicity of contemporary social life. How can we empower those individuals, and how can we help long-lasting change? we think we need to focus on the regional education community that's already there, because in German it's called Bildungslandschaft, the regional community, and we need to recognize the already existing professional expertise and diverse practical experiences that we can find there. And we want to acknowledge that those different actors bring different skills to the table, and that there lies an enormous potential in bringing those actors together and in facilitating their participation in shaping social and economic transformations. So this, of course, entails new competencies for educational managers as well, new ways of finding those synergies, of activating citizens, institutions, various actors to participate and to cooperate. So enabling and qualifying education managers to do just this means conveying a diverse set of practices, techniques, skills, and knowledges that are able to link and integrate those stakeholders and to organize and manage and facilitate their network activities by identifying strategies for dealing with complicity, or by organizing participation formats and decision-making processes. And we think that we can do this by working with these 10 modules with different people from the education sector to bring those competencies really to life. We came up with these 10 comprehensible course modules. They focus on certain aspects and on certain specific skills in the activity set of such managers. And we hope that in their entirety, they will convey the interconnected and complex set of abilities that is needed to facilitate sustainable and democratic development. For instance, complex challenges, where it's about joint action to really work together and to find decision-making processes collectively, or in locomotives or swimming pools, where it's the question about how much leadership or how much participation is really needed in a local context to bring forth the social development there. And each module has a first step where we try to connect those modules with each other. It's blended learning format. So there will be a weekend in the middle, a weekend workshop where there's time for intense work together and collegial support. I'm sorry, I think I'm over my time already, so I'm gonna cut it short. I hope there will be some discussions on house space. If you have further questions or want to contact us about that, we're really happy to answer your emails, as you can see there in the top right corner. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Maximilian, and you are welcome to any extra time you took. It's a fascinating project and worth investing the time in. So with those words, we've actually come now to the final pitch of our spotlight on civic education in action. And we're going to be closing this third pitch of this session with Jakob Erle, who was already with us representing a different topic a moment ago. The topic that we're looking at this time is from NECE, the Networking Arab Civic Education. And I'd just like to say a word of introduction to Jakob before I hand over to him. So he is the director of International Academy for Education and Democracy based in Copenhagen, Denmark, with almost 40 years of experience of civic education in Denmark, Europe, the Arab world, and global projects. In addition, he's the Secretary General of NECE, as I just mentioned, the Network of Arab Civic Education. So, Jakob, would you like to unmute and say a word? You're sharing your screen, I see.
Yeah, I cannot use my mouse when I'm sharing in presentation.
But the screen is looking very good. The screen is looking perfect for you to start. So over to you, Jakob.
Yeah, great, thanks a lot. So like there's a European network for civic education, there's also an Arab one, which has a process that started actually at the European Networks meeting in Cordoba in 2012. And we had our own meetings, the last one in Casablanca, and now we are in 2020. We do a number of different activities. One is that I would point people to is the database. We developed a database of with country profiles where you can see the state of civic education in a number of countries, both Arab and European countries. In the database, there's also organizations that you can find and approach for possible cooperation. We organize exchanges and networking in the Arab region and with other regions. The last Arab conference we had was in 2018 in Casablanca with around 350 participants. And before that, we had the conference in Hammamet in Tunisia and the conference in Alexandria in 2013. So we try to organize biannual conferences for people in the field, working in the field somewhere in the Arab world. And right now we are working to develop a 3-network database of organizations and practitioners in the field where we cooperate with NECE, the Eastern European Network with NECE, which works in Central and East Africa, East and South Africa, sorry, and ourselves, where it's possible very soon to get similar data like the one I talked about before for all these regions, which could be very useful for the very much needed cooperation between the Arab region and Europe and with the other regions as well. You will find us on the website NECE Community, and you are welcome to write to us if you would like to cooperate or ask questions and so on. So we welcome exchange and cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jakob. So that indeed now rounds off the final of 13 different projects, all based on citizenship education in action. I'd like to remind you where you can find more details about the projects and the presentations that they have provided, and contact details to any of the people who've been presenting today on our House Space page. In the main menu, you have the NECE Conference 2020, a drop-down menu, and the last item on that menu is the Marketplace of Good Practice projects, and that is the dedicated page to all of the projects that have been represented in these Spotlight On sessions. Now, I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague Dirk, who has a guest. I can see the guest on the stage. I don't think you can yet, but you will in just a moment. So Dirk, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tanya. And I've got Christoph with me here on stage, and you've been opening up the conference yesterday. You just told me your first NECE conference was in 2007 or 2008. So some of them you've been organizing, some of them you've been a participant, but you've really seen the development over many, many years now. You started off with saying this year is really different. There is a crisis year. We're not going to have people come face to face around it here. What is your resume so far from the first 2 days?
Thanks, Dirk. Yes, indeed. As I said at the beginning, and all of you, of course, have been already noticing, this is really a different year and a different conference, of course. And so far, my resume is really the main point is the technology has been working, and we've been able really to come through to you, I hope, on your sofas, on your desks, to your desks, and really enabled you and us to enter into an interactive communication and really make this conference to a classical NECE conference, although in a digital space. And so on this note, so to say, I really like to acknowledge and to give a hand to the technical stuff here in this room. It's an enormous work you did, and of course my team, the NECE team, did a great job in really bringing it all together. So thanks on this note to all of you.
Thanks so much, Christoph, for those insights. I can imagine it must be a big relief. It was probably quite scary to take a face-to-face conference, which was living from the community building, from the networking, into more or less now a fully virtual space, given a few panels that we have on the live stage here. Talking about the panels, we had a few panels on the first day, a starting panel this morning around it there, and then a series of parallel workshops. Any particular messages or statements that still are occupying your mind, or that you think that was really an insight for me?
Yes, I think the first panels, really the first two panels with Thomas Krüger, the president of the federal agency, Andreas Görgen from the Foreign Office, the general secretary of the Goethe Institute, and of course with our artist curators from the Prince House Foundation and Maya Khalil from London, and then of course the keynote from Maya Göpel, were really setting the tone as far as I was concerned, because it was really important to find a way really to address the urgency of citizenship education and the urgency of the situation and the challenges we are all in. I think Maya Göpel did a wonderful job in really projecting us and telling us about the possibilities of human agency, basically, self-efficacy and the possibility to make a difference on a global scale when it comes to the transformation of the spaceship Earth, as she called it, or the possibilities and the necessities really to act in an Anthropocene world. So Maya did a great job, and I think the others really joined her in looking at democracy and the challenges, and trying to look also at democracy as a potential for alternative futures, so to say. So nothing really should be looked at in a dystopian way, but democracy has the potential to be creative, and of course citizenship education plays the essential role in that.
Thanks, Christoph. I had the luxury of actually eavesdropping into lots of those parallel workshop sessions to get a feeling for what's been going on. And I've been seeing lots of those topics that have been raised and framed by the panel discussions being taken up in very, very much more detailed levels from a geographical perspective, or from a discipline perspective. You've been sitting on just 3 of them and didn't skip around so much. Any particular insights from those workshops that you've been participating in?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, the workshops, as I tried to point out at the beginning, have been trying to bring the best of citizenship education, which citizenship education can offer to you. So they had an enormous variety of topics, an enormous variety of formats, and an enormous variety of geographical scope. And so I was really particularly interested, I have to say, and impressed by all panels and workshops who were able, as we have entered the digital world now, to bring in perspectives, for example, from Africa, bring in perspectives from the Mediterranean, from Eastern Europe, which simply would not have been possible on that scale in other NECE conferences. So we all have to think back, of course, to all these conferences where we could hug each other and could interact each other, and I hope this time will come back. But I think the digital possibilities should stay with us for the coming years as well.
Thanks, Christoph. And I think we all agree it's a big quest is now, how can we actually get that human dimension back in with all the technical opportunities and possibilities that we have. But I think we're still very, very deep social beings. You mentioned the panels. Tomorrow there will be one final panel around the NECE Declaration. Can you give us already a sneak preview?
Yes, I hope I can. So everybody has been asking us in recent NECE conferences, in the NECE conferences last year and the years before. How could you define the takeaway of such a conference? And of course, it was a little bit of an embarrassment, but because we could not really produce a text or document where you could just say, well, that's what is citizenship education about, that defines our situation. This year is different, as so many things are different. We have a NECE declaration, and I guess all of you, or I hope at least most of you, have already heard of it. It's being published just 10 days ago on 27th of October. It's been the work of a joint working group from the NECE Advisory Board, from NECE partners, and really it addresses the situation we are in, and it looks at the situation as a challenge, but also as an opportunity to advocate citizenship education on the European and the national level as an essential service to society, to make our society more resilient when it comes to crisis, to enable citizens to deal with uncertainties. And this declaration, which is really worth a read, I would argue, will be discussed tomorrow in a panel with people and with officials from the European Commission, from the Council of Europe, and not only with them, but also with, for example, Yasmin Wiran, a young Muslim, French-Italian citizen, the Young European of the Year, by the way, and a founder of an NGO, We Belong, and she will speak a little bit in her capacity as a young European, which is claiming her European citizenship in a way. And I'm very much looking forward to listening to her. And of course, we will have all our corresponding networks with us. NECE, INSEE representatives will be there. And of course, we will have somebody from Africa. I think it will be Sheila Nabakwa. So really expect a very lively discussion and a very meaningful and important meeting at the end of this conference, where we will look at this declaration and hope to work with the declaration, not only tomorrow, but really in the coming months when NECE will still be alive.
Great, thanks so much, Christoph. It looks like there will be an interesting final day tomorrow. The Youth Democracy Award is next on our program. Back to Tanja.
Yes, indeed, the Youth Democracy Programme, or award rather, let me say. But before we move on to that, we have another musical interlude. We have the band Madani here, set up on stage, ready to launch into action as soon as we hand over. And after this short musical interlude, we're actually going to find out who has won the prize this year for the Youth Democracy Award. So over to the band. I'm sure you've all guessed the time has come. We have arrived at the Youth Democracy Awards. Before we turn to that, a short word of thank you to the band, Madani, who was just playing for us in the musical interlude. And I'm not going to say anything more at this point because, in fact, we will be coming to that a little bit later. So as the introduction to our award ceremony, as you can imagine, in pre-pandemic times, normally the members of the youth jury for this Youth Democracy Award would be here sharing the stage and guiding you through our program this evening. Unfortunately, traveling to Berlin was not part of the agenda this year, so you'll be very happy to hear that they are indeed with us virtually to guide you through the evening. This Youth Democracy Award has been in place since 2008, is awarded annually to recognize exceptional young commitment. And the award is independently organized by a youth jury supported by the German Federal Agency for Civic Education. And that means that all of the decisions taken for this award are done in a very participative way. It's a prize from young people for young people. The German Federal Agency for Civic Education provides the jury with expertise, support, and of course the funding required for a project of this nature. The jury consists of 15 young people between the ages of 18 and 24 from all over Germany, so is widely representative. And they have, as always, the difficult task of selecting a winner from this year over 80 applications from all over the world. Before we get to know which project has indeed won this year's Youth Democracy Award, the president of the Federal Agency for Civic Education, Thomas Krüger, who is here sharing the stage with me right now, would like to say a few warm words of welcome. So over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. Dear winners and dear participants of the Youth Democracy Award, members of the youth jury, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome you to the Youth Democracy Award ceremony in 2020. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you in this slightly unconventional format on behalf of the Federal Agency for Civic Education. The Youth Democracy Award has been awarded annually since 2009 in cooperation with the International Democracy Award in Bonn. Every year I look forward to this special occasion, not least to looking into many excited faces during my welcome and shaking hands with many inspiring young project organizers. Today I'm speaking to you via camera. A pity? Maybe, but also somehow appropriate. The motto of the Youth Democracy Award 2020 is Young, Loud, United. This year, the award ceremony brings us together as never before. Young people all around the world are sitting in front of their screens, eagerly waiting to hear which projects have been selected for the award. Welcome to all of you. I'm delighted you are here. Be it the COVID pandemic or other social developments that have taken place over recent years, like the climate crisis. With its motto for 2020, the youth jury of the Youth Democracy Award is asking what unites us and what divides us as societies, and what is the role of young people in this regard. Over the past year, international media coverage has shown that young people everywhere in the world are speaking out on the topics they care about. What this year's motto of Young, Loud, United, the youth jury was particularly keen to award projects that build bridges between people in times where fronts are hardening and some opinions are drifting towards the extreme. When the current competition was initially planned, nobody could have foreseen how topical this would become with the COVID pandemic. Yes, COVID is making us innovative and creative and seems to turn solidarity into the most important guiding principle for action. But there is also a lot of disagreement on what are appropriate measures, who is to blame for rising infection rates, and who is most affected and deserving a particular protection. And guess what? That's a good thing. The ability to argue is a quality of our democracy, perhaps the most important quality, as long as dispute remain respectful. It is important to allow diverse voices to be heard. We should not give too much credence to supposedly simple answers to complex questions. This is what divides us and what makes it difficult to build bridges. The truth is rarely simply black or white. It needs to be negotiated between different shades of gray, sometimes in tough processes. Whether it is the year abroad that was planned or the project one is committed to, COVID has thrown up considerable obstacles, especially for young people. This was confirmed by recent research, such as the well-known Sinus Youth Study. Uncertain future prospects, social distancing between friends, worries about family members, and limited development opportunities hit young people even harder than other age groups. The youth jury has organized the competition every year and selects the award winners has given this much thought. Do young people even consider voluntary work at present? Aren't projects at school or youth centers all being cancelled? Or is a necessity literally the mother of invention? So the deadline for application was extended and young people were motivated to submit their projects despite or precisely because of this new situation. We could have imagined how well this would work. 88 projects were submitted from all around the world, from Bayreuth, Leipzig and Düsseldorf, but also from Hong Kong, Chile and Lebanon. And once again, we see confirmed that young engagement is alive against all odds. It is loud, it is determined, and it can unite us. In this sense, I look forward to the presentation of the award winners of 2020, as well as 2 further projects that are receiving a particular recommendation tonight. I'd like to thank all applicants, and in particular the voluntary youth jury that has shown a lot of commitment, creativity and flexibility to ensure the awards can be presented tonight. I look forward to a great award ceremony and thank all those who were not selected for their application. I would like to encourage everybody to engage in future activities and call upon everyone watching tonight to apply for the Youth Democracy Award next year and the year after that. It's good to stay young, but our democracy existentially depends on being loud and remaining united through commitment. Thank you for your attention. Be healthy and a good ceremony.
Thank you, Thomas, for providing that insight in how these democracy awards work. I'd actually like to now hand over to Lena and Nicholas, who are both members of the youth jury, because the moment has arrived and all is about to be revealed. And this means that the projects that have won the Youth Democracy Award this year and will be taking home the prize money of €3,000 is about to be announced. Lena, Nicholas, are you with us?
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are then. Okay, so our first laudation.
So, hey, my name is Lena. I'm from the Youth Democracy Award jury. And for 12 years, we have honored committed young people with up to 3,000 euros. And as said before, this year's motto was Young, Loud, United. And the choice for the motto was quite easy this year because there were so many young people who made a strong commitment in 2019 and 2020 worldwide. There were so many young people demonstrating on the streets, and for example, the protests in Hong Kong, Belarus, in Thailand, Black Lives Matter, the abortion rights in Poland, and of course, all the climate protests. They were standing up for democratic values, freedom, justice, and a better world. Being politically active means getting up and standing up for your right. In the last few months, the youth jury received about 80 applications, and all of them were very, very strong. It is always incredibly nice to see how many great ideas young people have and to support our democracy. And this year, we have chosen 2 winners. One of them I will introduce to you now, and I would like to start with a question. What is the percentage of women in the German parliament? 31%, 41%, or 51%? The answer is, it's only 31%. This shows the underrepresentation of women in politics. Laws for women are made without women. Voices are missing since so many years. But all voices in a country should be counted to live a democratic life. But also in other areas, such as the media, for example, talk shows, sport, art, music, women are massively underrepresented and often not visible. But this year's Youth Democracy Award winner fights for a gender balance in the music industry. It's a concert series with female and non-binary acts in Düsseldorf. Our winners are Anna, Jule, Maike, and Jessie from Fempop. They want to increase the visibility of women and non-binary people in the music industry and offer them a platform. We have chosen the project because it's a permanent project and they have many plans for the future, for example, lectures and a festival. It's a project in the field of events, which had been very difficult during the Corona crisis. With the award of Fempop, we want to show solidarity to the art and culture scene. Culture is an important pillar for democracy. Many ideas and social projects are born there, and it's a place where people can be active. I think at present it's helpful to plan for the time after the pandemic. That's why we wish you that you might be able to have concerts already, maybe in the second half of 2021. So thanks for your commitment. This is your Youth Democracy Award 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you for that. So, in fact, I would like to welcome the initiators of Fempop here, and I have a couple of questions for them. Are they available? There they are. I see them on the screen. Hello, it's lovely to have you here with us. Would you just like to speak up so we can check that your audio is okay?
Hi.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes?
Yes, lovely. We can hear you. That's just fine. So my first question that I'd like to direct to you is, what was your motivation to actually start with Fempop?
That's a very interesting question because there hasn't been a very specific situation that triggered the idea of starting Fempop. It was more a result of our own already existing feminist attitude and activism, and the observation that our local music scene, cultural industry in our hometown in Düsseldorf is quite really dominated by men. So there are a lot of male bookers, musicians, photographers, technicians that know each other, they're networking and giving each other chances. And so Fempop was a start to change that situation and to put an emphasis and represent all the great women, queer and non-binary people we also have here. And yeah, to to show we're here and we're ready to change things.
And to give another concrete example, I am a music student and I studied music and media. So besides my music education, I had also a lot to do with audio engineering, movie making. And I recognized that my teachers taught me about composers and audio engineers, but only about male artists. And so I realized this is a structural problem. And so I took the chance when Anna asked me to start Fempop Concerto. And so the journey started.
It sounds hugely exciting. So, in fact, I have a second question for you, if we have the time, which I believe we do. We made the time for it. What role do you see in pop culture regarding connecting people and overcoming boundaries?
We really think that pop culture plays a huge role in connecting people, but also in representing different minorities. For example, gender, queer and racial minorities are actually starting to fight for representation in pop culture. They're claiming their spaces. So we are right now see a lot of artists who are there, who represent their minorities, are doing great art. But it's not only fighting for representation in pop culture, but also in politics. So pop culture always has some political impact, and that's what Fempop also represents.
And that's the reason why we are very happy and grateful for this wonderful prize. Thank you very much. And we dedicate it to all the artists who had already played a concert at Fempop Concerto and all the others who will have a concert. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us. It was very kind of you to give us more insights into what is Fempop. So, in fact, we're going to now be going to Beirut, where Nicolas will be joining us and providing the second laudation. And Nicolas, are you with us? Would you like to speak up?
Hello, yes. I'm with you.
Okay, so it's not only Fempop that commits itself to giving young people a stage, but many other people who've raised their voices and campaigned for more democracy. So for this reason, the youth jury is in fact going to award another project this year with the same amount of money, 3,000 euros. So Nicolas, please tell us about this.
Thank you, Tanya. Also, thank you, Mr. Krüger, for your introduction speech. Young, Loud, United. These words shaped our call for applications for the Youth Democracy Award 2020. And actually, we've witnessed a lot of loudness this year. Debates, discussions, screams. Sometimes part of vital democracies, but often filled with hatred. In this many-voice society, where more and more people become able to speak their mind, it is important that facts are pointed out by independent sources. This evening, I would like to introduce to you a project based in Lebanon called the Phoenix Daily. It is built up by young people from all sects, languages, genders, and regions of the country, which is nowadays facing many challenges. They dedicated themselves to the goal of bringing people together, finding the truth and presenting it. As a non-profit organization, the Phoenix Daily tries to establish an exchange of perspectives on the basis of mutual respect. For too many of us, it's become safer to retreat into our own bubbles. This sentence was said by former US President Obama during his farewell speech in 2017. Later on, he stated that we become so secure in our bubbles that we accept only information that fits our opinions, instead of basing our opinions on the evidence that's out there, unquote. At present, these words sound quite current to me. By the medium of language, we, the people, interact with each other, negotiate, and reach agreements. An important element of a democracy is the ability to reflect on ourselves and ask questions. Don't let this go in times of trouble. Keep asking questions. Which dangers, challenges, and opportunity does the future bring for young people? What does it mean to be loud? What does it mean to unite? On behalf of the youth jury, I proudly present the Youth Democracy Award 2020 to the Phoenix Daily.
Thank you for those words, Nicholas. So at this point, I would like to actually welcome Ziad Hadara to the session. Ziad, are you with us?
I'm with you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you here. So you are calling in from Beirut, Lebanon, and you are...
We've been having a live workshop here for the past 2 hours on the issue of identity. Very interesting conversation. And it's actually the beginning of many more to come. It was just the starting of this long program on what constitutes Lebanese identity. And we are, I think, I mean, as a parallel workshop, I think we're probably one of the very few that are actually with physical live people here. We are socially distanced. We have the masks. I just took it off. But I won't talk much about it. I will leave the floor to our winners, the Phoenix Daily. But before that, I'll present them with a symbolic award, which I think is more important than the cash award, right? Congratulations, guys.
Hello, can you hear us clearly from Beirut?
We can hear you very well indeed. Hello.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for this fantastic award. It means the world, not only to us three on stage, but also to the other 18 people with us in the room. And it's been really symbolic for Beirut and Lebanon. Our media and press in Lebanon have covered it, and it's shown great solidarity in a very troubling and challenging time. So thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts. So, in fact, I also have a couple of questions for the three of you representing the Phoenix Daily. And I'll just launch into the first question, which is, how did you experience working together in a virtual way without meeting each other in person?
Well, yes, we were founded in the midst of the pandemic, right when everything was in lockdown here in Beirut. And in fact, this team has never met fully in person. Today is the first appearance we ever have in person, and we have the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung to thank for that. And we're ever thankful for having that opportunity. We don't know when we'll have it again. But it's been troublesome, but it's also been very easy. When you have a common goal and you see the picture together and you want to reach that goal, you find your way, especially with the challenges that we face. The pandemic wasn't the biggest thing on our minds, and we were able to cross those boundaries. Whether it was through our secretary having a Zoom meeting open almost 24 hours a day, or if it was through social media communication, we strive to find that way because communication in those troubling times was ideal and the most pivotal thing for us as a newspaper.
That indeed sounds challenging, but what a gift that you've actually been able to meet today. I didn't realize that that was the case, and that is just wonderful news, and I'm sure has made you very grateful for the opportunity. So I'd like to ask you a second question, and this one is namely, in which direction would you like Lebanon and the region to develop in the future? What is your vision?
Our vision for not only Lebanon, but the Arab region is for Lebanese and Arab people to decide where they see the region to go. We think that not only as Lebanese citizens, we deserve the right to have it, but it's part of our dignity, it's part of our identity. And like Ziad said earlier, we've had that discussion today for the past 2 hours. What is Lebanese identity? And in a bigger perspective, what is Arab identity? And we want to forge that conversation ourselves. We want to be at the hands and the mouthpiece of that conversation and be the leaders taking initiative to find those answers. Although we don't have them today, after 2 long hours of discussing what Lebanese identity is, we never came to a full consensus. But we don't need to. The point is to talk about it and to discuss it and to have that power in our hands. And for us, that's where we see Lebanon going in the future, to have that intellectuality, to have that discussion, to have that debate, and to be empowered to do that. And that's what we do here at Phoenix Daily. And for the Arab region, we see that to be the goal as well. And we hope that other people in the Arab region will see the value that we see in this as well.
Thank you for articulating that so beautifully. And I'd actually like to finish up with a final question for you, which is, which challenges and which opportunities do you see for journalism in our global society today?
Yes. So although this started as a local initiative and and month by month, we start looking at how this initiative and this newspaper could benefit the Arab region. We do think that this could benefit the world in itself and the democracy as we see it. This is about bringing both academia and deep expertise and understanding, but also opinion and youth into the discussion on affairs, both international and national affairs. And we see that that's lacking in the global journalism world as we see it. We see that there is opinion, but it's not acknowledged. We need to acknowledge our biases, and we need to be proud in our biases, because that's what shapes our global identities and makes us different from each other. And if we don't acknowledge that we're different, it's hard to then decide to unite. So for us, it's about being young, loud, and united, and acknowledge those as three privileges, but also three rights. And we hope that this not only is something that's inspirational and symbolic for Lebanon or even the Arab region, but hopefully to our more international audience as well.
So the warmest congratulations from us here at this end to all of you, and the three of you particularly, but representing, of course, the Phoenix Daily. So indeed, Max is going to be our laudation number 3. And Max, are you with us?
Yes.
Then let me hand over to you, Max.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thanks for handing over to me. First of all, congratulations to the 2 winning projects. We were really amazed by your work. But of course, as already mentioned, it was quite hard for us to choose, as more than 80 projects from all over the world applied for the Youth Democracy Award 2020. This is why we decided to give special acknowledgement to 2 more projects that were really close to winning and impressed us with their creative and powerful engagement. The 2 projects we want to particularly recognize are both focusing on making discrimination for certain groups of people visible. Their aim, fighting for more tolerance, empathy, and respect. Nevertheless, the ways the 2 projects are pursuing these goals are very different. So the first project I want to tell you more about is the AG Queer of the Heinberg Gymnasium in Göttingen, Germany. The AG Queer is a group of young pupils acting as an advocacy group for queer people in their school environment by doing anti-discrimination and educational work. What we especially liked about the project, even though the AG Queer got a lot of resistance from conservative groups and the New Right, they kept going. The students created the project from their own initiative and thereby show that young people can positively influence the structures they are living in, and thereby are an inspiring role model for others. The action tells us democracy is what you make of it. So congratulations to the AG Queer in Göttingen. All right, and now to our second acknowledged project. Did you ever sit in a wheelchair while visiting a city? It might sound like something exciting to experience, but what if there are stairs and no ramps or elevators? Or if the sidewalks are way too narrow? The second project we decided to especially acknowledge is dealing with exactly these questions. The Stadttour in Hamburg offers city tours in wheelchairs for able and disabled people to sensitize them and make them experience the hurdles of wheelchair users in city themselves. And they literally do so at eye level with city guides in wheelchairs. Their aim? To break down barriers in our heads and streets. Wouldn't it be nice to live in a society inclusive for everybody? But before I say any more words about the projects, take a look for yourself. Both projects have taken the time to create short videos for you that we will now show you. So best greetings from Heidelberg. Congratulations again and have fun watching.
Wir sind HG Queer, eine offene SchülerInnengruppe, die sich am Heinberg-Gymnasium Göttingen für queerpolitische Themen einsetzt. Bislang haben wir beispielsweise geschlechtsneutrale Toiletten und verpflichtende Antidiskriminierungsworkshops im 8. Jahrgang organisiert. Wir wollen uns für die Gleichstellung queerer Menschen engagieren und auch eine Anregung für andere Schulen sein, ähnliche Projekte umzusetzen.
Ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich mich für die Gleichstellung queerer Personen am HG einsetzen möchte. Ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich mich für die Sichtbarkeit queerer Identitäten einsetzen möchte.
Ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich unsere Schule als sicheren Hafen für alle queeren Personen gestalten möchte.
Ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich lernen möchte, Verantwortung zu übernehmen und in Teamarbeit politische Aktionen durchzusetzen.
Ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich eine ehrenwerte Aufgabe finde, diese besonders engagierte SchülerInnengruppe bei ihrem politischen Engagement zu unterstützen und zu beraten Und ich bin bei HG Queer, weil ich es sehr wichtig finde, gerade in Schule etwas dafür zu tun, dass wir ein offenes Klima, ein diskriminierungsfreies Klima für alle SchülerInnen und für alle Lehrkräfte immer weiter entwickeln.
Wir sind unseres Wissens nach die erste Gruppe an Schulen, die sich für rein queerpolitische Themen einsetzt. Wir engagieren uns in unserer Freizeit auch außerhalb der Schule.
Wir haben eine offene Lehrerinnenschaft und Schülerinnenschaft, die uns bei unseren Projekten unterstützt.
Wir nehmen Einfluss auf schulinterne Gremien, wie beispielsweise unsere SchülerInnenvertretung, und zeigen so, dass demokratisches Engagement wirkungsvoll ist.
Eine Tour der ganz besonderen Art. Mit dem Rollstuhl durch Hamburg.
Moin, wir sind Stadttour. Wir sind 10 Studierende aus Hamburg und haben es uns zum Ziel gesetzt, Inklusion in unserer Gesellschaft zu fördern. Um diese Mission in die Tat umzusetzen, haben wir vor 3 Jahren im Rahmen der Hochschulorganisation NECE das Projekt Stadttour ins Leben gerufen. Wir denken, dass Verständnis am besten durch Erleben erreicht werden kann. Stadttour ist eine Stadtführung, bei welcher Interessierte die Stadt aus der Perspektive einer rollstuhlfahrenden Person erkunden. FußgängerInnen nehmen Platz in einem Rollstuhl und werden 90 Minuten lang mit Mobilitätsszenarien konfrontiert, welche RollstuhlfahrerInnen in ihrem Alltag erleben. Dabei sind Aktiv-RollstuhlfahrerInnen die Tourguides und erzählen den Teilnehmenden interessante Details zu Hamburgs Barrierefreiheit. Sie lassen auch persönliche Anekdoten einfließen. Natürlich wird so nicht der tatsächliche Alltag einer rollstuhlfahrenden Person widergespiegelt, jedoch entsteht eine Sensibilisierung für das Thema Inklusion. Darüber hinaus ist es uns wichtig, einen Dialog auf Augenhöhe herzustellen. Am Tag der Tour trefft ihr euch mit unserem Guide Björn, der unser Projekt seit 2018 bereichert. Nach einer kurzen Einführung in den Umgang mit den Rollstühlen geht es auch schon los. Die Tour wird euch erst durch die Hafencity und die Speicherstadt führen und endet am Rathaus. Im Anschluss gibt es noch eine kleine Reflexionsrunde. Es ist uns wichtig, mit Stadttour nicht nur einen kurzzeitigen Einblick zu gewähren, sondern langfristig ein gesellschaftliches Umdenken anzuregen. In den 3 Jahren seit der Projektentstehung haben wir eine Menge geschafft. Wir freuen uns, bald wieder losrollen zu können und hoffentlich auch euch bei einer unserer Stadttouren begrüßen zu dürfen.
What a truly inspirational end to the second day of our NECE Conference 2020. It's an incredibly positive outlook to have projects of this nature taking place across Germany. The award ceremony itself is now slowly coming to a close, and I'd like to, on behalf of the Youth Democracy Jury, congratulate once again, most heartfelt, our awarded projects. But not only that, we would also like to thank all of the young people who have committed themselves to democracy this year. Although only 2 projects could win tonight, it was these young people who made the world more democratic with their projects and showed that indeed the young people of today are young, loud and united. Next year is another year, and of course the youth jury will be again awarding the Youth Democracy Award, and perhaps you may like to be part of it. So the application period starts in the spring of 2021, and if you follow the social media channels of the Youth Democracy Award, you won't miss any of the news and will be up to date on when to take that step to apply. Until then, stay committed, loud and united. Before we close, we're going to now move into a final musical session, a musical interlude from the lovely band we just heard from before, Madani. Now, I didn't mention it earlier because that would have been a little too early, having not announced the winners, but indeed Madani is our young artists from Berlin who are working very closely with the Fempop project, one of the winners of the Youth Democracy Award this year. So on behalf of the Youth Democracy Jury, I would like to wish you all enjoyment, a farewell and a good night. Over to the band once again.
How can you live and leave the rest behind? I wanna know, did you open up your eyes? Did you wake up? Did you start to look around and realize, staring at your screen, is it sinking? Is this what you need? Are you listening? This is not a dream, it's a reality. Will you start to shake things up and stop your sleepwalking? Will you start to shake things up and stop your sleepwalking? Will you start to shake things up and stop your sleepwalking? Excuse me, my nose is bigger than your whole vocabulary. Yeah, my dark skin makes me think I shouldn't be here. Good thing I sold my flying carpet, so I don't steal any jobs. By now I've given it all. That's the kind of shit that gets me hoping for a meteorite, just a sudden message from above. That's the kind of shit that gets me hoping for a meteorite, just leave it as it was. Hold on, who do you mean by them? Like when you say, oh my God, that's so different, and there's too many of them to take in. That's the kind of shit that gets me hoping for a meteorite, just a sudden message from above. Out of sight, out of mind. If I get the meteorite, just leave it as it was. That's the kind of shit that gets me hoping for a meteorite, just a sudden message from above. Out of sight, out of mind. If I get the meteorite, just leave it as it was. 'Cause I can't, I can't, I can't. 'Cause I can't, I can't. 'Cause I can't, I can't, I can't. 'Cause I can't, I can't.
So I think we have to repeat that round of applause that got lost. So everyone, please, the applause that our wonderful band just had. What a marvelous end to the Youth Democracy Awards. Now, we can't end just here, of course, because you want to know what's happening tomorrow. My colleague Dirk is about to take us through the schedule for tomorrow. Over to you, Dirk.
Thanks so much, Tanya. And it was really great to see all those projects, art projects coming on from the Youth Democracy Award. And yeah, it's very late on a Friday evening here in Berlin. And so let's give you a brief outlook for tomorrow. And I would like to invite Susanne Ulrich from the Center of Applied Policy Research in Munich. You've been hosting a couple of Get Connected events during the conference around it there. But the title was Get Connected, Stay in Touch. So how is this Stay in Touch going to look like?
Yes, hello, good evening to Berlin and greetings from Munich. I really love to be with you there and I miss NECE in person so much. I call myself a NECE veteran and people who know me know that I'm really passionate about the N in NECE, about the networking. And that's why I'm fond of connecting and reconnecting. I invite everybody after this session, I don't think it's so late in the Friday evening, we do have some time left, to meet with me in the house space area, in the Get Connected area, to have a little glass of wine. Maybe I'm well prepared, as you can see. And then tomorrow at 2:15, I'm waiting for you also in the same Zoom link you can find in the house space to talk with me, to chat with me, to come together about the highlights of the conference, our wishes and expectations for NECE 2021, and just to finish the conference the way we did it when we came together in person as much as possible, as close as possible to be in person together. That's the idea of Get Connected, Stay in Touch.
Thanks
so I hope I see you all there. And how to get there, if you got a registration, confirmation, and you find in that confirmation a link to the house space. You should register there, and there you can find us sitting there in the Get Connected, Stay in Touch corner, waiting for you.
Thanks so much, Susanne. And you had a wonderful idea. I think we're going to steal that idea and we're going to organize ourselves a glass of red very soon as well. Christoph, you're standing again on the stage because yours going to be the second point on the agenda tomorrow.
Yes, of course, that will be the closing panel. I'm just talked about it, and it will be centered, focused on the NECE Declaration, the main takeaway from that conference, because we all know there are lots of takeaways for everybody individually, but there's just this takeaway, which we will discuss tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock sharp with officials from the European Commission, from the Council of Europe, with a young European citizen from France, Yasmin Wiran, and with partners from our corresponding networks. So expect a great and interesting panel, because that declaration will be something to be worked on in the coming year. We will continue our advocacy for citizenship education on the European level, and we will look forward to having you there and really get in touch with the decision makers on the European level as well.
Thanks so much, Christoph. And I remember on our first session on the 10th of June, there was this first talk about the potential declaration, and a lot of people have been very skeptical, and see how far we've actually come. Alicia, you're joining us from Warsaw in Poland, and you've been also highly involved or deeply involved with the declaration as well. But also Poland and Warsaw has been very much in the news lately around it there. So of course we're very, very curious to actually get a snapshot of actually what's going on. What is your perception of the dynamic at the moment in Warsaw?
I will start with repeating the invitation for tomorrow's panel. The declaration is quite a bold initiative, because there were really many people saying, who cares about declarations now? And I have to say, it's not really a declaration, it's a call to action. And it's also a chance to talk about citizenship education, which is now in the times of the new form of Homo sapiens, which is Homo isolatus. Citizenship education can be easily neglected or marginalized. And on that note, I would like to really say that in the meantime, in spite of all this isolation, we have had in Poland a practical exercise in collective action, a practical exercise in public participation and solidarity. This is something which is very strongly underlined in the declaration. We had a nationwide wave of protests, as you probably know. More than 500,000 people participated, and it was triggered by the ruling of the so-called Constitutional Tribunal with judges loyal to the ruling party, and this ruling has drastically restricted the right to abortion. Can I ask the first slide, please? I hope it will work, but I will go on speaking because oh yes, and this is the photo that I took myself. You can see the symbol of those protests. We have already had a very strict law on abortion before, and now no more termination in cases of severe fetal defects was proclaimed. And it was done in a very non-democratic way, without public debate, through the back door of the tribunal. So, but what I really want to say is not about Polish women and girls who went into the streets in thousands, and but also that this is not about abortion only. It was the trigger, but as you would see on the posters that people were bringing in, it was really about human rights. It was about freedom. And what we are witnessing in Poland, and this is the slide, it says, for freedom, yours and ours, maybe also yours. I'm talking to the people who know that you can't be free if other people are not free. So I think that this is also a very good, it points to the fact that democracy is really fragile, and that after the attacks on the independence of the judiciary, on independent media, and on LGBTQ rights, we can see now this move against rights of women. And it's not only Poland. You could see it in different countries which slide, as we do, towards what some people call illiberal democracy or electoral autocracy. And this is also a country, not only, it happens not only in Poland, where European values are easily forgotten. The rule of law is not treated as a fundamental rule of governance. And the moves that were made in Poland and the words that Europe is not going to take away our sovereignty, our tradition, our faith. I think that those words could be easily said by ultranationals also in Italy. They were already said in Great Britain, and they can be said everywhere. So I would really like you to invite to see more photos on Google or wherever you want, because it was also a proof how emotions can play a crucial role in politics. It was about rage, it was about fear, and it was about hope. So if you see dirty words on the posters, don't be afraid and don't criticize. As the women and men supporting them were saying, we have already been nice. Now it's over. Thank you, and see you tomorrow at the panel.
Thanks so much, Alicia. And yes, so it's not just another declaration. It is a call to action, like we've heard already so many times over the last couple of days, in so many different forms, be it loud, young, united, get in touch, get connected, stay in touch. We've heard it from all the panels, in all the workshops. We know what needs to be done. It's time for us to get organized, to really come together as a community and get into the doing, into the action. We wish you a wonderful last day of the conference tomorrow. That's from us, Tanya and myself. We say goodbye.
Indeed,
and have a wonderful evening and a great end of the conference tomorrow.
Yes, and I just have two final words that I'd like to say, and that is the greatest of thanks to the NECE coordination team, to the camera team here, to all of the technicians here who've been working flat out to give the NECE community a voice at this conference. So thank you.
Of course, final word from the NECE coordination. So many thanks and heartfelt thanks to you, Tanya, and to you, Dirk, for that wonderful moderation and, of course, the preparation and the collaboration all along. Since May, I think we've been collaborating on that project, so it was great to get you on board, and thanks again for investing so much in that NECE conference. Thanks so much.
A pleasure.
Thanks.